Hello, my name is Richard. I'm here again with my story on gang stalking in Port Alberni. How they gang stalked me after I whistle blowed in London. First, I'll tell you that when I was about 10 years old, my mother and my father, they brought in some foster children to live with us. And we actually took them in. Eventually, we ended up taking them in, and they became part of the family. That is, they lived with us right up until they were adults. And they were around my same age as me. One of the girls was older, a year older, and the other two were a year younger than me. Or a little bit younger than me, not much. Anyhow, one of the boys that came to live with us, his name was Tim, he was used and abused when he was a child. Sexually abused, mentally abused, physically abused, you name it. And it sure took its toll on it because he became one himself. He became a psychopath, a child abuser, that is, a child molester. He has been convicted of molesting children. His name was Tim. The name he used to go by when he was in elementary school was Tim Kelly. That wasn't his birth name given to him. It was the one who abused him. His stepfather. And when he was in school, he was picked on. And they called him Smelly Kelly because of his last name rhyming. Was Kelly. And he was, when he came to live with us, my brother and I, we were, of course, bigger and stronger than he was, and my mother, too, basically, both look after him in school and don't let him get beat up so much. And so we protected him through school, and we did that. There was a lot of times that I knew for a fact people were going to beat him up, and I prevented that. And I'm sure my older brother has as well. Because he really was a little bastard. And we tried loving him. My mother did, and my father did. They tried to love him just as much as they tried to love just as much as they loved his sisters, who are still, I call my sisters, and they're still, they were still part of the family right up until now, but Tim, however, is not, because he is a psychopath, he is a child molester, and we do no longer have anything to do with him. The entire family doesn't, or didn't. But anyhow, Tim was between the ages of about 10 and 15 is when the time he lived with us. And I always knew there was something wrong about him, and I was always worried that he was going to commit a crime, a serious crime. He was going to hurt somebody. And I always felt that I had to watch over this and watch him, even if it meant hanging out with him. And yes, there was plenty of times I had friends ask me, "Why do you hang out with that goof?" And, they just didn't understand. Because even as older, when we became adults, and I would still go and visit him and hang out with him. And again, it was because, especially when he was an adult, I was worried because he could go and do whatever he wanted, and I was afraid that, who's watching him, sort of thing. And especially when I moved away as well to Alberta for work, and he did the same thing. He left and he moved to Ontario. There was plenty of times when if I heard of a murder, like Paul Bernardo murders, for instance, before he was caught, I was always wondering where was Tim, because I knew, I thought, was Tim around at the same time that these teenagers were going missing? And I thought that maybe he was part of it. That's what I always assumed. So I was always worried that, when I heard things, a little child went missing, I always assumed, okay, where's Tim? If I heard a child went missing, well, I always questioned, where was Tim that day? Or that night, whatever. That's what I thought of this Tim fellow. But anyhow, because my parents were foster parents, What ended up happening was there was a lot of other foster parents. The foster parents all got together with their kids, and we'd go camping at the end of the west end of Sproat Lake, west of Port Alberni. At the time it was called the M&B Campground. It was right at the very, very end of Sproat Lake, where the Taylor River empties into the lake, and we would camp there for sometimes 3-4 weeks at a time, easy. And we would spend the whole time, we would stay out there. So there was a lot of kids, usually at least 30 kids were out there at any given time. Some of them were, not all of them were foster kids, like myself. I wasn't a foster kid, just my mother is a foster parent. So us and our foster siblings came with us, of course. And that was about getting all these kids off the streets of Port Alberni. So anyway, we would camp there for, as I said, for 4 weeks at a time. And this was back in I was in my teens still, so this was in the late 70s and early 80s. I was about 15 at the time, 15, 16. Anyway, one day, myself and 3 other boys, they were younger than me. I do believe I was the oldest one. Out of the 4 of us, I believe I was the oldest. One day we went for a walk away from the campground to the Taylor River Bridge, which was a couple kilometers away. We had to walk on the logging road. And we walked to this bridge. And it was at this bridge. When we got to the bridge, we looked down below and we could see that there was 2 fellows who were camping. Two guys had a vehicle and they were camping down below by the bridge, below the bridge. So we went down there and we struck up a conversation with these 2 men. And let's see. I'll explain that basically one of these 2 men, eventually we came to realize later at another time, after seeing him being arrested, we realized it was Clifford Robert Olson, serial killer Clifford Robert Olson, who we had seen camping there with another guy, another man, who I now believe was John Robin Sharpe, or so the authorities made me believe was John Robin Sharpe, as I will explain to you, eventually get to you. You can Google that name, John Robin Sharpe, and you will find that what I'm speaking of is true as far as a link to Clifford Robert Olson. If you search, you'll find there is a link between the 2. You'll find also that the media did not start throwing John Robin Sharpe up into your faces until after I made that phone call back in the latter part of the 90s. That's when you started to see who John Robin Sharpe was, and the connection between John Robin Sharpe and Clifford Robert Olson. You didn't see that until after I made that phone call. And that phone call was about the day I met Clifford Robert Olson. That's when I started being gangstalked, was because I phoned the authorities and I told them that yes, there was more than just one serial killer, and for years it had always been maintained that there was only just Clifford Robert Olson. But that's wrong. There was 2. There was 2 serial killers. And you've been told lies, okay? And so because of this, I'm being punished for that. And my family and my wife need to understand this and wake the hell up, because I'll explain it to you what this is really all about. Another time. So I'll make another video again. In my next video, I'll explain more. Until then, take care. Remember, God loves you more when you use canvas and hammer. Thank you. Bye.